Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome friends. My name is Mithilesh Kumar Jha. I teach political science in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Guwahati. I welcome you all to this course on political parties and party system in India. And in this course, we will try to understand basically the three parts of dealing or engaging with political parties. So, one is about to understand what is parties, what is party system, how it evolved. Particularly, we will focus on this party and evolution of party system in India. But in the first segment, we will also discuss the relationship of political parties with democracy and how it contribute in modernizing the society and what are its role in a democracy. In the second part, we are going to discuss the parties, specifically national parties, regional parties and state parties, and their role, leadership, ideology, support based and structure, and the way they contribute in the politics of India. In the final segment of this course, we are going to discuss some of the challenges of political parties in India and the way we can resolve or the prospect of parties and party system in Indian democracy. So, basically we will be dealing with these three segments in this course. To start with, in this lecture today, we are going to discuss the political parties and party system in general to understand its specific particular nature and characteristics, also its role in a democracy. And then in the second part of this lecture today, we are going to discuss major themes, objectives and general outline of this course. Now, to understand political party, we need to understand that political parties play a very significant role in organizing modern democracy and representative politics. So, in modern times, one cannot think of a democracy or competitive politics without the existence of political parties. The parties functions as a mediating link between the state and government on the one hand and citizens and the society on the other. So, you can see party as a kind of link to the policies and programs of the government and the demands and aspiration of the people and society on the other. So, political parties in that sense represent the views, aspiration and demands of the people. So, in that ways parties influence the policies and decisions of the government while they raise the demands and the aspiration of the people or the citizens. You can also see political parties are as a instrument or as a democratization tool or a tool which helps in the modernization of the society. So, in that sense, political parties articulates and express the meanings of democracy. It helps in the democratization of institutions by including new voices or excluded and marginalized voices in the democracy and while controlling the state power or the government, the parties also tries to um, uh, use those demands or the aspirations of the people in policy formulation. So, in that sense, political parties play a very significant role in the modernization or democratization of the society. The biggest role of political parties is in any democracy to organize power and mobilize the masses. Now, so in many modern democracy you will find political parties while they try to capture state power by contesting election, they also mobilize the masses in support of their ideology or in supports of their demands. So, political parties in modern democracy plays a very significant role in organization of the power, and they aim to exercise that power by mobilizing the masses. So, all the political parties will try to articulate their demands, they will have their views on particular issues. In asserting those issues and in their struggle for power, they constantly tries to mobilize the masses, and this mobilization of the masses are the support base of the party. So, parties' electoral performance depends on their ability to mobilize the masses. So, most of the political parties while tries to contest election, to win the election and form the government, they are able to do so or they can do so only when they have the ability to mobilize the masses. So, all the political parties in modern democracy therefore is a crucial link for the organization and exercise of power and the mobilization of the masses. Edmund Burke in 18th century described political parties as a body of men united upon some particular principle upon which they agree. Now, this particular principle is something which gives a party a kind of cohesiveness, and that cohesiveness helps in the organization of the people or in the formation of the group, and then they take that principles or that ideas to the masses to mobilize the masses. So, political parties operates by agreeing to certain key principles or key ideas, and then the leadership take those ideas to the masses, and that leads the political parties to expand its support base among the masses, to mobilize them for their principles or for their demands. According to Robert Huxhorn, a political party is an autonomous group of citizens having the purpose of making nominations and contesting elections in the hope of gaining control over government power through the capture of public offices and organization of the government. So, another political scientist, Robert Huxhorn, says that a political parties can be seen as an autonomous group of citizens which have a kind of purpose to control the government power or the public offices, and to do that they need to form the government, and for forming the government the parties must contest elections by nominating their candidates, and that is how modern political parties operates. This is also a good point to understand the difference between political parties and other groups in society. So, one needs to make a distinction between the government and the society here. As I said that government helps in the formulation of policies, implementation of those policies and so on. Parties works or functions as a link between the government and the society. So, the social demands and issues are articulated by the parties, and that articulation in turn leads to formulation of the policy. So, political parties in that sense is a different groups than the state, government and the society on the other hand. However, one also needs to understand that there are many groups that operates in the society. For example, the interest groups or the social movements and so on. They also articulates the demands of the people, different communities. However, they are different from the political parties, and how they are different, that we will discuss in the next slide. That is, one often makes a kind of connection between interest groups and social movements with the political parties, as all of them tries to articulate the demands and issues of the people and mobilize the masses for their support, and then try to influence the policy decisions. So, interest groups, social movements also influence the policies of the government in their own ways. So, all these groups do articulates the demands and the aspiration of the people. However, social movements and the interest groups are different from the political parties, and these are the 4 characteristics that distinguishes political parties from other groups. The first is the political parties aims to capture the state power by winning election. So, the other groups that I have discussed, like interest groups or the social movements, while articulating the demands of the people, do not try to capture the state power or to fight the elections. So, they will lobby, they will mobilize the masses, express their demands or make certain demands to the government. However, they will never try to contest the power. Of course, you may have the examples where different groups initially start as a social movements or as a protest groups and turn on to be a political party and contest elections. So, the history of Congress party in India, for example, was correct example of this transformation of a party as a movement to party which fights election and seek to capture state power and form government. So, Congress party started as a kind of movement or movement party to oust the British from the India, but after the independence it began to contest elections, and even prior to that in some provincial elections or local self bodies, Congress did contest elections, but it started as a party or movement party or party of movement. So, in contemporary history, the if you recall the India against corruption movement led by Anna Hazare and Arvind Kejriwal, they later went on to form a political parties. However, so Aam Aadmi Party is the result of that protest or movement against corruption. So, one can see a kind of transition from a party which fight for certain issues and lead that struggle as a political party, so to say, but then it may also develop as a full-fledged political parties when they began to contest election. So, what distinguishes political parties from other groups in this sense is that the political party's sole objective is to contest election and capture the state power, and that distinguishes it from the other groups like interest groups or the social movements. The other characteristic of political parties is that it is the organized groups of bodies with the card carrying members. So, all the political parties will have a disciplined or card carrying members which represents the views and ideology of that particular party, and this again is different from interest groups and social movements where there is a kind of looseness, there is a kind of openness and fluidity in terms of membership, organization and the ideology of that particular groups and movement. Third is the party focus not on any particular issue or just on a particular issue. So, for example, a particular interest groups or social movements will have a very well defined issues and demands. On the other hand, political parties will have a number of issues covering all the issue that concerns the government policies. So, they will not just talk about say economy or environment or culture or a particular decisions of the government, but political parties will develop its understanding and articulation on the range of issues that concerns a government. That is again unlike the interest groups or the social movements, which will have a very focused or narrower issues and scope of articulation and assertion. Finally, the fourth characteristic that distinguishes political parties is their shared political preference and general ideological outlook. So, when we will discuss different political parties in India, we will explain this point again and again about the political preferences. So, all the parties ranging from the ideological matrix of left, right and center will have some kind of cohesive general outlook to which their leaders and members subscribe to, and that again is a kind of uniting or unifying factors in a particular political parties that helps in the effectiveness of the organization, their ability to mobilize masses when they have certain political preferences and general ideological outlook clear among their leaders. Now, if we look at the evolution of political parties in modern democracy, which is of course, as I have discussed, essential for the functioning of modern democracy. You cannot think of modern liberal democracy or representative form of government without political parties. However, political parties are modern phenomena. That means, there have been states or empires or the government without the political parties. It is only in the modern times that political parties have become absolutely necessary or essential for the effectiveness of democracy and representative of forms of government. This evolution of parties started in its modern forms in the US, where the Federalist Party was a mass based party and it acquired certain significance in 1800. And now throughout the 20th century or in the 21st century, we think that party has acquired is sine qua non or a kind of absolute essential part of modern democracy and modern polity. So, you can find political parties which could be democratic, but it can also be autocratic, as in many single party polity. However, they become representative of the people or the society by contesting the elections or winning the election. So, if we now look at party system which is different from political parties. So, as the name suggests, political parties is a group which fights the election or seek to capture the state power. Party system on the other hand is a kind of whole which conditions the parties to behave in a particular manner. So, for example, in one party system or two party system or multi party system, the nature and the characteristic of the party systems in the polity conditions the political parties to behave or act in a particular manner. So, party system refers to the interaction and interrelationship between different kinds of parties existing in a polity. So, there will be different kind of parties. they will differ on the basis of their ideology, on the basis of their organization and support base. However, their approach to democracy or to other parties are conditioned by the existence of party system. It can be simply understood as a larger whole, and all the political parties are integral part to that whole. So, according to Duverger, well-known political scientist, a party system refers to a particular relation among parties through numbers, alliances, geographical localizations, etc. Sartori emphasized upon the interaction part of the political parties, and he argued that interaction taking place among parties lead to inter-party competitions and struggle for capturing power. So, for Sartori, to understand party system, one needs to focus on the interactions that is taking place between or among different parties, or the inter-party across the parties competitions and struggle for capturing state power. So, different parties will articulate different kind of demands, or even on the similar issue they will have different approach, different understanding, and on the basis of that they try to mobilize the masses. So, in terms of their strategy or the campaigning for mobilizing the masses or winning the maximum support from the people, you will find that all the parties are not just fighting elections on their own by trying to outperform the other, and in doing that they try to mobilize the maximum support of the masses. So, party system in that sense refers to this interaction between the parties and their competition for the struggle or capturing the power. He also argued that parties are relational in nature and analyze the voting, elections, tactics and strength displayed by every party in a political system. So, one needs to understand political system as a whole, which is constituted of different parties, by observing or analyzing the voting, election, tactics and strength and weakness of different parties that are the constitutive part of that party system. So, in that sense party system simply is a kind of overall system where each political parties functions and their functioning is determined or in a sense conditioned by the party system that exists in a polity. So, we will discuss different kinds of party system where it becomes clearer to understand how party system influence the functioning or the working of political parties. Now, to understand the effectiveness of party system, it is absolutely necessary to understand different political parties or particularly the opposition parties. So, in any polity there will be one ruling party, and that ruling party requires to be more effective and accountable to the people the existence of opposition parties or other parties, and this simultaneous presence of ruling and the opposition party make a party system more effective, more accountable to the people. So, the opposition enhance the stability of the party system on the one hand and democratic polity on the other. And now, there are different kinds of party systems, and within a democratic polity you will find the simultaneous presence of different kinds of party systems. So, for example, at the national level you may find just one or two party or party blocks. In the state level you will find a kind of two party systems, And again at the local level you may have a kind of multi-party with one party dominating. So, there are simultaneous presence of different kind of political parties and the possibilities of their existence within a country if you look at the national, state and local level elections. Now, to understand different types of party system in modern democracy, there are conventionally differentiated on the basis of the existence of the number of parties in a polity. So, for example, in a polity there will be just one party. This kind of party system is called one party system. Then there may be the existence of two party which alternatively form government in a polity, which is called two party system. And then there are the existence of multiple parties or especially in a society divided on language, religion, caste or ideological point of view. In other words, the social cleavages in the society leads to formulation of different political parties, and that is characterized as a multi-party system. And so, these three are conventionally the broad differentiation of political system in modern democracy. However, there is one more party system which is one party dominant system. That means, there may be the presence of many parties or multiple parties, but it will be one party which dominates or captures the state powers, institution and social groups in dominating the affairs, the polity and the democracy in that society. So, broadly speaking, these are the four types of party system depending upon the number of political parties that exist in a particular polity. Developed and developing countries have their own set of parties, and these may be a one party, two party, multi-party or a single party dominant system depending upon, as I have said, the number of parties that exist. Now, in most of the developing countries you find that political parties came into existence as a result of the anti-colonial struggle. Now, these parties before they come to fight elections exist as a movement party. So, Congress party in India and similarly parties in South Africa and Philippines, they have the history of mobilizing the masses to oust the colonial rule before they began to fight or contest elections, and that struggle against the colonial rule give them a formidable position in electoral competitions after the independence. Now, to briefly discuss each of these party system, we can begin with one party system, and one party system is something ironical, because a system implies the existence of more than one party. So, you cannot have a system if there exists only one party. However, as a conceptual framework, this kind of party system help us understand the polity or political parties, political processes in the modern democracy. So, you have many modern political system where one party dominates society and state by excluding other parties. So, there is the exclusion of other parties and the possibilities of other party contesting or competing with the ruling party. So, one party will dominate both the state and the society. So, modern socialist regimes particularly are the examples of one party system. So, in this system party operates ideologically. The ideology of parties are absolutely crucial, and it controls virtually all the institutions of a state and every aspects of society. So, in one party system you will find one party operates ideologically, and it controls virtually all the institutions of the state and every aspect of the society. The two classical example of one party system is Chinese Communist Party and Communist Party of Soviet Union. However, there are many other democracies where exist one party or we can call them one party system. For example, Ghana, Tanzania, Zimbabwe are also example of one party system. However, they differ from the communist or the socialist regime in the sense that these party acquire this status after their prolonged anti-colonial struggle, and they largely organize around the leaders or the charismatic leader rather than a strict ideology. That is the part of the communist party. So, this is one party system where one party dominates the polity, state and society. Now, the two party system is characterized by, as the name suggests, two major political parties that have roughly equal chance of winning elections and forming governments. In comparison to other party system, the government are relatively more stable in a two party system where both the parties have the equal chance of winning the election, and it therefore provides a kind of relatively stable and decisive government, and the government is constantly held accountable by a strong opposition party. So, in such system of two party, there would be the existence of minor parties, but the position of two parties are absolutely formidable and power alternates between them. So, one after the other these two parties form the government and leave very little space for the other parties. That does not mean the other parties cannot contest the elections, but their positions are somewhat ineffective as far as government formation is concerned. So, a strong opposition party in two party system displays the acceptance of dissent and constructive criticism, which defines a healthy competitive party system. So, USA, UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand are typical examples of two party system. Multi-party system on the other hand refers to a plural democracy, particularly as seen in developing and post-colonial countries. This kind of party system is characterized by a healthy competition between or among many political parties. So, in this party system there are constant formation of newer parties and they also disappeared. Now, this kind of formation and disappearing we will discuss when we will discuss different political parties or the evolution of political parties in India, but to understand multi-party system one needs to understand that it is characterized by a highly competitive plural party system with more than two credible parties. Now, this existence of more than two political parties reduces the chance of any single party forming the government on its own. So, in a polity characterized by multi-party systems, the nature of government you find is relatively less stable than one party or two party system, and government is often characterized as the coalition government because no single party gets majority on its own. So, in the multi-party system you will have a coalition form of government, or the nature of government is more or less a coalition governments depending upon the pre or post poll alliance and so on, that leads to a government which is relatively less stable. Italy, Belgium, Norway, Israel and India are examples of multi-party system. Now, one party dominant system for conceptually understanding political parties are crucial for understanding the particular phase or countries where one party controls or exercise power for a prolonged period of time. Now, it is often confused with one party system, however, they are different. So, in contrast to one party system, there is a competitiveness in one party dominant system. That means that in one party dominant systems, all parties are free and allowed to compete for the power. If you remember, in one party system, the other parties are simply banned or not allowed to compete for the power. But in one party dominant system, there are possibilities or scope for the formation of newer parties and competition among them to form the government or to control the power. However, this one party dominant system leave little scope for the other parties to capture or exercise power, because it is dominated by a single party precisely because of their ideology, which captures the majority of population, and also because of their inheritance of say fighting the British or the colonial rule. So, in one party dominant system, a single party enjoyed prolonged period of power. So, there are possibility that a one party system may develop or become a multi party or two party system, or a party system where two blocks, for example, in India the NDA and the UPA forming a two kind of alliance which controls the power, and the other blocks hold that power accountable. But in one party system, what you have, for a prolonged period of time, there will be one party which alone exercise the powers. So, Liberal Democratic Party in Japan and Congress Party in India till 1967 are the classic example of one party dominant system. One of the important feature of this party system is that real competition exists not among different parties, but within different factions of the dominant party. So, a single party, if you recall the Congress Party from independence till 1967 have different factions, and the competition or real competition for power exists among these factions. So, other opposition parties will try to align with the like minded factions in the dominant party to put pressure on the government, to articulate their demands or to raise their voices. So, in one party system you have a party where the factions exist within the dominant party rather than among or between different political parties. Now, if we look at the nature and roles of political parties and party system, we find there are different types of political parties, and these parties are often classified on the basis of their ideology, and winning and losing an election largely depends on the basis of upholding certain ideology by political parties, which range from left, right and center. And these political ideology we will discuss in the following class, and we will come to this ideological basis of political parties again and again when we will discuss different political parties in India. So, there are different ideological parties, and ideology remains the basis for differentiating or classifying parties, which may be extremist left or right, and then there are parties who are also a kind of combination or in the middle ground. So, for example, Congress parties and its ideology in India is regarded as the ideology which represents the center and not the extreme left and right. Besides this ideological differentiation between the parties, there are also ethnic or identity based political parties, particularly in developing diverse and plural democracy. Now, these ethnic or identity based parties represents the social cleavages. So, if a society is heterogeneous, diverse and plural, there are social divisions on the basis of certain identities or ethnicity. There are likely to have political parties on the basis of ethnic and caste lines. So, many examples in India, for example, AGP or Samgan Parsad, Akali Dal, DMK, AIDMK in India, Yoruba in Nigeria, Hispanic in USA are examples of such political parties. Besides them, there are also extremist party, which refers to those party which tries to bring about radical transformation and changes in the existing political system or political structure. Now, these extremist party are largely represented by communist parties and the socialist parties in Chile. There are also pacifists and far left parties in Ceylon, Norway, Denmark in 1960s and 1970s, where these parties did not aspire only to capture the power, but capturing the state power was to bring about radical transformation in the existing structure of polity and economy. There are new left parties also which regard internal democracy as important and work for establishing a socialist democracy. So, left parties in India like Communist Party of India, CPI and CPIM are the examples of such party which tries to functions and operates within the parliamentary structure to establish a socialist democracy. To understand the role of political parties, one has to understand that political parties are integral part of a party system in sustaining a democratic government or a democratic polity. In doing that, they are responsible and accountable to the people and the constitution. So, political parties operates and functions by mobilizing the masses, in that they represent the voices of the people, and if they fail to represent the voice of the people or betrays their promises or then mass or the people will hold them accountable by voting them out of power and bringing new political parties in power. So, you find political parties accountable to the people on the one hand and to the constitution of the polity on the other hand. So, all political parties, for example, in India requires to be registered by the Election Commission of India. So, if a group or the movement aspire to contest election, to capture power and then formulate policies according to their ideology or preferences, they first need to register by the Election Commission of India, and then that registration requires their adherence to the constitution and the constitutional visions in the polity. So, the political parties are responsible to the people on the one hand and the constitution on the other hand. Political parties play a very significant role in the democratization and modernization of the society. So, besides forming the government or capturing the power, political parties also help in the modernization and democratization of the society. So, in other words, the deepening of democracy or making people aware of their political rights are something which is done by the political parties besides their struggle for power. They also often encourage and provide opportunities to marginal and disadvantaged groups to make electoral democracy more inclusive and accommodative. For example, if you look at the evolution of parties or party system in India, it is also characterized by democratization, where the voices of those who were excluded and marginal are also included in the policy decisions and the policy making of the government. So, besides forming the government and capturing the power, political parties also help in the democratization and modernization of the society. The competition for power among the political parties requires that they should not compromise with the inter and intra-party democracy. The transparency in selecting candidates, decision making and funding goes a long way in not only strengthening the political parties, but also in legitimizing the democracy. So, the maturity or the effectiveness of democracy depends on the way political parties operates, and if there are transparency in the selection of candidates, decision making or funding, then the health of democracy is more effective or more mature, more efficient. So, the political parties play a very significant role in strengthening the democracy by operating through transparent mechanism of selecting the candidates or decision making and so on. So, efficient, transparent and effective parties and party system are sign of political maturity and fair and open competition between and among them are the sine qua non for the survival of modern democracy. So, you cannot think or imagine the existence of modern democracy and their efficiency without the existence of a effective, transparent and efficient political parties and party system. And now, in the rest of the lecture, very briefly I will discuss about the major themes and general outline of the course, and finally we will discuss some of the weakness or the apprehension about the political parties in modern democracy. So, in first few lectures we are going to discuss political parties and party system, their relationship with the democracy, and then we will focus particularly on the political system in modern India, the evolution of political parties, different types of political parties and their recognition by the Election Commission of India. Then we will move on to study specifically the ideology, organization, leadership, contribution and functioning of different political parties such as Bharatiya Janata Party, Indian National Congress, Janata Dal Secular and Janata Dal United, RJD, SP, CPI and CPIM from the left, then BSP, Shiromani Akali Dal, Shiv Sena, NCP, All India Trinamool Congress, DMK, AIDMK, AGP and TRS. So, these are the combination of different political parties on the basis of ideology and also on the basis of their ethnic or caste or religious orientation. Then we will move on to understand the ideology and the pragmatism of Indian political parties. So, there are debates in India how far ideology is relevant and significant for the political parties. Do they consider ideology as the priority or the winnability of the candidates and the political compromises. So, these are some of the things which we will discuss, and then we will go on to understand the major challenges and the criticism of political parties in India, the lack of inner party democracy, dynasty rule, caste, religion and ethnicity and so on. And we also try to understand the difference between the national parties and the regional or state parties and the dichotomy between them. Finally, in the last part of this course, we will discuss how to reform political parties by ensuring transparent party funding, inner and inter-party democracy, and election for the party post and so on. Now, to briefly discuss the objectives of this course is to understand the nature and types of political parties and party system in India. So, particularly we will focus on the political parties and party system in India, their nature and their types, and how it evolved from a one party dominant system to a multi-party political system. To understand the evolution, contribution and major characteristic of political parties in India, and to understand the major shifts and transformations in political parties and party system in India. Then other objectives are to understand the challenges or the major challenges before the political parties and the ways and means to reform it, to make Indian democracy even more inclusive, accommodative and participative. And finally, the main objective is to understand the link between Indian democracy and the functioning of political parties in India. So, one can also understand Indian democracy by understanding or analyzing the role and functioning of political parties. Now, to conclude this lecture, one must understand that no doubt political parties are modern entities, that means it is a modern phenomena. It is not a trans-historical phenomena. It developed more rapidly in 20th century and started from the 19th century, and went on to play a major role in the organization and exercise of power in modern society. So, the real power or the struggle for power is among and between different political parties in modern society. So, political parties in that sense play a significant role in the exercise and organization of power in modern society. In doing that, it serves a kind of crucial link between the state and the government on the one hand and society and people on the other hand. So, it plays a kind of intermediary role between the governed and the governing. So, political parties are absolutely crucial to understand modern democracy and how power is exercised in modern democracy. Although political parties are platforms to express the voices or grievances of the people and meant to provide the meaningful alternative. So, political parties are also not just to give the platform to express the voices of the people, but it also provides them alternative. So, for example, a polity ruled by a particular party is not satisfied with the performance of a particular party, then the other parties or the opposition parties provide them an alternative to form the next government by giving maximum support to those who are in the opposition and voting out those who are in the government. So, political parties do provide meaningful alternative to the people. However, what we also find that political parties and party system often become an instrument merely for capturing power. So, all the political parties instead of representing the voice of the people or the issue that concerns them, they compete to win the election. So, the winnability becomes more important for the parties than raising the crucial voice of the people or the masses. So, it often serves the interest of the leaders. So, in the process the many legitimate voice and the issues are then expressed in non-party platforms. So, the rise of social movements or other kind of citizens associations and formations are the platform where they legitimately raise the issues that concerns the people, and political parties are involved too much perhaps in capturing the power or winning the election, and that do not allow them to raise the legitimate issue and the voices of the people, and that leads to crisis in political parties and the belief and trust in political parties among the masses. So, therefore, many scholars have been suspicious of the role of political parties in democracy. For example, Jefferson, the founder of modern founding father of democracy in USA, he feared that political parties for their selfish motives often undermine the necessary unity that exists in this society. So, he was very fearful of factionalism, hyper competitiveness among the political parties for capturing the power. In doing that, they undermine the necessary unity that exists in any society. Similarly, Robert Mitchell argued about the iron law of oligarchy, that means that all the decisions or most of the decisions in the political parties are not taken democratically, but by the leaders or the few elites. So, there is the culture of oligarchy or some sort of high command culture in most of the political parties in modern democracy, where decisions are often taken by the leaders and the few elites. Similarly, John Stuart Mills argued about a kind of restrictions or controls on the freedom of thought and individual conscience, as political parties tend to work and operate as a collective body. In India too, Jaiprakash Narayan argued about party-less democracy, and Kothari put forward the idea of non-party political formations. So, there are legitimate apprehension and suspicion about the role of political parties in modern democracy. However, political parties continue to play a significant role in modern democracy, and therefore, understanding of modern democracy and its effectiveness requires the understanding of political parties in the modern democracy. So, that is all in today's lecture. To understand more about some of the themes that we have discussed, you can refer some of these books like Joya Hassan, Parties and Party Politics in India, R.S. Kurtz and W. Crotty, Handbook of Political Parties, Ajay K. Mehra, Political Parties and Party Systems, Andrew Haywood, The Politics, Nirja Gopal Jyal and Pratap Bhanu Mehta. There are chapters on political parties from the Oxford Companion to Politics in India. So, these are some of the writings you can refer to understand more some of the themes that we have discussed in this lecture. So, that is all for today. I will see you in the next lecture. Thanks for listening. Thank you all.